In May 2022, the first Russian bombs fell on the Ukrainian city of Bakhmut. 1 year later, after the longest and fiercest battle in the Ukraine conflict, there are conflicting reports about who's in control of the city. Yevgeny Prigozhin, the leader of the Wagner group, has claimed victory.
Полностью был взят Бахмут.
Ukrainian sources insist that their forces hold sway on the outskirts of Bakhmut. Either way, there is little left of Bakhmut to defend or to capture. The city has been virtually razed to the ground. Now, the Battle of Bakhmut was considered largely symbolic rather than strategic. The city is not a gateway into a major region, nor is it a rail junction, nor is it on a major supply line. It gained importance only when soldiers of the Wagner group took it upon themselves to prove that they could capture a city which the Russian forces could not. Kiev, on the other hand, saw it as an opportunity to draw out more Russian troops, inflict high casualties, and weaken Russia's defense ahead of a major planned counteroffensive. Hello and welcome. From the Times of India, I'm Miraj Shah. Today on Geoscope, an overview of how things stand for Russia and Ukraine as the conflict enters a decisive phase in 2023. The war in Ukraine has not been predictable. In February 2022, Russia invaded Ukraine. President Vladimir Putin thought the war would last a few days, perhaps a few weeks, and most of the world thought on similar lines that the Ukrainians would put up a fight but go down fighting in the face of Russia's mighty army. That's not how things have panned out. In July 2022, Ukraine conducted major offensives in the regions of Kherson and Kharkiv, proving to the world that they could recover territory, push the Russians back. In January 2023, news started coming out about this planned counteroffensive. It sounds like an offensive that will happen fast, be conducted on multiple fronts, and aim to push the Russians back. Now, close to the end of May, Bakhmut has fallen to the Russians. There are news reports of Ukraine mobilizing armored divisions and troops for their counteroffensive.
Ukraine's defense of Bakhmut has forced the Kremlin to expend much of the Wagner group as a force and commit high-value Russian airborne forces to sustain attritional advances. Ukrainian defense of Bakhmut has degraded significant Russian forces and will likely set favorable conditions for a future Ukrainian counteroffensive.
Russians, on the other hand, are waiting in nervous anticipation while fortifying defenses and digging trenches along the 1,000 kilometers front line at places where they expect Ukraine to make a move. How do things look for Russia and Ukraine as they head towards what might be the most decisive phase of the conflict in 2023? Let's take Ukraine first. The biggest factor in Ukraine's favor is the unwavering support it has got from NATO. That translates into military aid, ammunition, money, and equipment. Between December 2022 and February 2023, almost $33 billion have been promised to Ukraine. At the recently concluded G7 summit, President Zelensky worked the room and canvassed support from multiple countries. While President Biden confirmed that the United States would support the training of Ukrainian pilots on Generation 4 fighters like the F-16,
I told them the United States, together with our allies and partners, is going to begin training Ukrainian pilots in fourth-generation fighter aircraft, including F-16.
The governments of the Netherlands and the United Kingdom agreed to build an international coalition to provide fighter jet support for Ukraine. Secondly, the effectiveness of Ukraine's air defense has been nothing short of spectacular. The land battle for a counteroffensive will require neutral skies. The United States has equipped Ukraine with the Patriot batteries that are considered to be amongst the best air defense systems in the world. Thirdly, Ukraine has been successfully using a two-pronged strategy of sabotage and long-range precision hits. These capabilities have been significantly strengthened after Britain has given an unspecified number of Storm Shadow missiles to Ukraine. These missiles are accurate, they fly low and are hard to detect. These missiles can make a huge difference. They can slow down the Russian advance and target ammunition and supply dumps deep within Russian-controlled territory. And finally, Ukraine has taken the initiative away from Russia. Right now, Russia can only speculate about where Ukraine will launch this counteroffensive. On the other hand, Ukraine does face significant challenges. The F-16s are good news, but their integration and training pilots to use them is going to take time. Secondly, the Patriots might be the best air defense system in the world, but they're extremely expensive. Not just the batteries, but also the missiles. The Russians know this. They know that the Ukrainians have a finite stock and have been throwing cheap Shahed drones and cheap missiles to deplete the Ukrainian stockpile. Well, how about Russia? Russia is dealing with issues of its own making. There's divisiveness within the army. Putin has changed the leadership every few months. There's an ongoing public feud between the Wagner chief Prigozhin and the military leadership. There's a shortage of manpower, even though Russia has already called up an estimated 300,000 reservists. These soldiers are often poorly trained and ill-equipped. The scorched earth approach involves indiscriminate bombing of cities when faced with resistance. It also increases the amount of ammunition used. Russia never planned for a long war and now faces a shortage of equipment and munitions. Still, Russia has a very large and formidable army when compared to Ukraine. And there's no getting away from the fact that Russia is a nuclear power with an unpredictable leader.
На территории сегодняшней Украины начали создавать антироссийский анклав.
As the world waits to see when and where the Ukrainian counteroffensive will take place, Ukrainian forces on the outskirts of Bakhmut have shown no signs of backing off. The Wagner group's chief, on the other hand, has indicated that he wants his troops out of Bakhmut before the end of May to be replaced by Russian troops. Russian troops that played no role in the capture of Bakhmut will now be tasked with protecting their gains as Ukrainians lay siege to the city. Holding on to Bakhmut might prove to be a more difficult proposition for the Russians than capturing it.